here we go. We're ready and raring to go for Turkey. Thank you, everybody. There's so many people already in here, which is mad. you guys are here before I am. It just shows that I need to be better at getting here on time. Let's see then. Who do we think is getting ready? Oh, there's so many of you. Hello, lads. How are we doing? Let's see what we've been chatting about. Yesterday's predictions. We'll go over predictions in a little while. Most of them basically out the window already, to be honest, after qualifying. But I'm sure you guys will have something to say about the predictions and what you think is going to happen this afternoon, especially with like lots of cars a little bit out of position. Lewis Hamilton all the way down in 11th. We've got obviously Carlos Sainz starting from the back. Could be very, very close indeed. Yeah, there's about half an hour left. Whoever was asking for like how long. Where can I watch the F1 online for free? No idea. Go to Reddit. I'm sure they've got answers for you. Just find one. Who do you think will be Merck's second driver after Hamilton retires? Jesus. It's a couple of years left, right? A lot can happen in 2 years in Formula One. A lot can happen in 2 years in Formula One. So when is the race going to begin? I think in half an hour, unless there's any changes that have occurred that I've missed before the race has started. Obviously, from what I can see, it's been fairly dry in Turkey. Well, I say that I can't really see. I haven't watched too much of the build-up so far. Been in a little bit of a rush this morning. Classic, you know. Why on F1 Countdown it says an hour and 30 minutes? Maybe it's been delayed by an hour. I wouldn't think so, because all the cars were already on the grid. And you wouldn't want them standing on the grid for over an hour. So they've all done the lap and they're now setting up on the grid. We're just looking at Bottas starting obviously in pole after Hamilton dropping down to 11th. Should we actually have a look at the qualification and the grid for today then? I'll pop that up there for you. Yeah, it should be about half an hour. Let's sort of go through the grid then. Let's have a little chat about who is where. And as I said, a couple of drivers out of position, a couple of drivers maybe a little bit disappointed with their qualifying pace, but some drivers in there will be very, very happy with their qualifying pace. Specifically, the guys towards the front, Leclerc's, Gasly's, Alonso's. But let's sort of go down the grid and see what we're looking at. And I'd love your opinions on sort of who you think is going to have a good race from the position that they're starting in. So let's have a little look. We've got Bottas starting from pole. Obviously, came in second yesterday, just behind Hamilton. Hamilton has that 10th-place penalty. But then we've dropped Hamilton down to 11th, and Bottas raises himself up to pole position. Few people asking yesterday whether there's any benefit of starting first or second in terms of obviously grip and traction. We know some racetracks, even thinking back to Sochi last time out, there's a massive benefit starting on one side of the grid compared to the other. But this track, because it's used so little throughout the season, because the racing line hasn't really rubbered in. You might remember last year, they resurfaced the whole track and it was like an ice rink anyway. There hasn't been too many races since then. So it's been unfortunate, but there's no real racing that goes on in Budapest apart from Formula One for the most part. And therefore, there's not really a best side to be on. So if you're Bottas, you're fairly happy because you're starting at the front. Hello, Sadie. Hello, Snow. How we doing as well? Lovely to see you guys. Verstappen, though, starting from second on the grid. And there's a bit of a debate going around, like, how long will it take Verstappen to get in front of Bottas? If you're Valtteri Bottas, this might be your last ever opportunity to win a Formula One race. So, I'm thinking, if I'm Valtteri Bottas, I'm going absolutely all out. Everything that I possibly can to get a win here today. But lots of people talking about whether or not Bottas will just drive off or will let Max Verstappen through or not really have too much to say about Max Verstappen getting the win here today. So I'd love to know your guys' opinions. Personally, I think Valtteri Bottas is going to try and win this race at all costs. I don't think he will be as unhelpful as he's been over the last few races for Mercedes. If we look back over the past couple of races, he's basically just let Max Verstappen through. You think of Zandvoort, you think of Russia, where he didn't put up too much of a fight for Max Verstappen. But today is different. Today they're right at the tip top of the grid, and I think they will have more of a battle between the two of them. Charles Leclerc starts in third place. Ferrari having a really good qualifying session with him. Obviously, only just managed to scrape through into Q2, maybe showing, into Q3. Ended up needing a little bit of a boost from Carlos Sainz to get himself up into the top 10. But on the softer compound tyre, when they had that pace, as you can see, they were really, really good. And Charles Leclerc got up to third place. I think the worry is the medium compound really didn't look good for Charles Leclerc yesterday. Struggled to get himself into the top 10. Had to have Carlos Sainz give him a little bit of a boost. So Charles Leclerc starting on the medium compound tyre as well could be very, very tricky for him as my stream finally decides to load. So I can tell you a little bit about whether or not we're going to have... Oh, maybe it looks a bit... It does look a bit rainy, actually. Maybe it is rainy. As I said, I've literally only just clicked into the stream, unfortunately. So, oh yeah, it's definitely rainy. I think we're probably going to start on slicks for now. But depending on how much it rains over the next few minutes or so, that could definitely change. Manev's here as well. Danny Ricciardo has a new power unit. Oh, I completely missed that. So is Danny Ricciardo starting behind Carlos Sainz then? It looks like it's not too wet at the minute. But yeah, where was I? Charles Leclerc starting on the medium compound tyre and really didn't look very quick on the medium compound tyre. So he's going to have a tough first stint, is Charles Leclerc. But if he can come out of the first stint and get onto the softer compound tyres, I think he'll have a really good race. Pierre Gasly starting in fourth place. Again, just qualifying for Pierre Gasly is so good this season. He's been incredible when it's come to Saturday. And then Sunday, it's been 50-50 whether or not it clicks for him, hasn't it? We've only seen him on the podium once this season. And it's not... I don't really know how it's gone this way for Gasly because he's been so good this season. And yet, I do think Alonso might have a good opportunity of catching him in the Drivers' Championship just because the AlphaTauri car and the AlphaTauri team seem to get things quite wrong quite often. And I know Pierre Gasly sort of talked about it last time out. They always seem to be the team that go the other direction and get things wrong. And I really hope that that isn't the case for Pierre Gasly today. I hope that he can, get a performance on Sunday that warrants some of the incredible performances he's been putting in on Saturdays. Because as I said, he's been probably the most consistent qualifying performer out there on track. And an incredible showing from him yesterday, starting on the second row. And it's that man, Alonso, behind him that he's going to be so worried about because Alonso just looks so good off of the start when it comes to these Grand Prix. I can't think of a Grand Prix where Alonso has lost places off of the starting grid. He just always seems to pick up a couple of places. His launches are excellent. He seems to just find traction off the start where everybody else maybe spins up a little bit. It is just that experience that he's got. And he's so wily, isn't he? I always use that word with Alonso. He's just such a wily, old-school driver and picks up all of those points wherever he possibly can. And Pierre Gasly is going to have a little look behind him, I think, going into Turn 1, Turn 2, because if anyone is going to be right beside you, it's going to be Fernando Alonso. And he's starting in fifth place just behind Gasly. And I'm very interested to see, firstly, Bottas and Verstappen, who's going to be in the lead between those two. And then secondly, Leclerc, Gasly, Alonso, those three could easily interchange places over the first lap or so. So it'd be interesting to see if Alonso can hop up a couple of places, possibly put himself in the podium position. He is the only driver in the top 10 in the World Drivers' Championship that hasn't picked up a podium yet this season. And I said yesterday, I think one is coming. I didn't know if it was going to be as soon as Turkey. I was sort of looking at the races later on in the season, possibly picking up a podium for him then. But it's Fernando Alonso. He could go and pick up a podium today. Like, why not? Sergio Perez starts in 6th. We know that Sergio Perez is not a great qualifier. I think he'll be fairly happy with 6th. In and amongst that sort of group again, he's got Alonso to contend with for the first couple of laps. Gasly might be a little bit easier for Perez to get past. And then Leclerc, just depends how good Leclerc is on those medium tyres and what sort of tactic Perez goes for over the course of this race, whether he just decides to go super long on tyres. We saw that in Russia with Perez, where he just went phenomenally long, and we know that he's so good at keeping those tyres going for an infinite amount of time, seemingly. So Sergio Perez is a little bit of a spanner in the work if you're an Alonso or Leclerc fan, I think. Because Perez is definitely going to be fighting in and amongst it and probably will go for a little bit of a different tactic. Just because they've got Verstappen up the front there. I think they might use Perez at Red Bull as a bit of a shield to Hamilton. So I think they might go for a different tactic with Perez so that Perez can be in and amongst the same track position as Hamilton after the first couple of pit stops. After the first pit stop. So I think Perez will be used as a bit of a shield, but also will want to make up places. Lando Norris starts in 7th place. Again, a good qualifying from Lando Norris in a McLaren that didn't look too quick yesterday. I think following his rich vein of form, might be a little bit disappointed with 7th place, which, considering that is, about par for where McLaren are, if you think about them 3rd, 4th in the Constructors' Championship, then 7th place shouldn't be, too bad a pull for Lando Norris. But I think he might be a little bit disappointed with that and will probably want to pick up places and pick up points further ahead of him. Hello, Sally. How are you doing? You all right? And Cole's back. Hello, Cole, mate. You okay? Hoping for a Gasly podium. Yes, Cole. We love that. Definitely hoping for a Gasly podium. Think it's going to be very tricky for him, but definitely hoping for one. Lando Norris, I think, will be a little bit disappointed. Can't be too disappointed, because as I said, that's about par for where you'd expect him to probably qualify, considering the car that he's got. But with Hamilton being behind him, with Carlos Sainz being behind him, he'll be fairly happy that he can pick up some points here today, and maybe trouble Perez off of the start line to see if he can cause some issues for Red Bull and get himself in and amongst that sort of battle for 3rd in the Drivers' Championship again. Then we've got Lance Stroll. Last year, obviously, sat on pole here in the pink Mercedes. Not quite the same level of consistency from Stroll yesterday, although did manage to outqualify his teammate, got himself in and amongst that top 8. I'm interested to see how Lance Stroll does today. It's been very 50-50. I haven't really been that enthused by Stroll's performances over the last few weeks. I think since the summer break, he hasn't been great, Lance Stroll. I don't think there's been any performances that have been super standout. And again, hasn't got a podium to his name yet this season. So maybe if there's mixed weather conditions, he can find a little bit of a gap or a place where he can slot one in. Yuki Tsunoda, what a qualifying from him. Finally got into Q3 for the first time in what feels like a very, very long time. And he needed that. He needs a little boost, doesn't he? He needs some emphasis in his driving. And he needs something to chase. And I think, the fact that he's in the points, starting in the points, rather than starting down in 15th, 16th, 17th, where we've seen him a lot over the last few races. Now he's in and amongst the points. He's got something to properly fight for. And I really hope that Yuki Tsunoda can pick up some points today, because I think that's just the resurgence that he needs and a little bit of confidence that he needs to maybe pick up some momentum in this season so far. Sebastian Vettel starts in the final point scoring position in 10th place. Obviously, was disappointed yesterday to go out in Q2 while his teammate went through. And it's Sebastian Vettel. I don't really need to say much more than that. He is very good. He is very consistent. There's been a few mistakes in his driving this season. We do have to remember he is in a brand new team this year. So Sebastian Vettel, mixed conditions. We're thinking back to Hungary, where he managed to pick up a podium that was then snatched away from him. It's possibly one of those races where Vettel could just come alive. It clicks for him. He finds something in the car. And again, he'll be looking to pick up points where he possibly can, because the Constructors' Championship is not looking pretty if you're an Aston Martin fan. So those two Aston Martins will be looking to pick up a lot of points. Hamilton starts from 11th place. Bit of a weird place to see him. Obviously was fastest yesterday, and I think will start to tear through the field once the race begins. I think he'll get past Vettel, Tsunoda, Stroll fairly quickly and easily. I think it's when you get up to Norris, as I said, Perez being used as a bit of a shield for Verstappen. Alonso, we know, has caused Hamilton trouble in the past as well, back to Hungary again with that performance in the mixed conditions. So Hamilton's going to find it tricky today to get back up there, but for me, I think Hamilton's probably still going to end up with a podium here. He is very, very quick. Obviously, won the World Championship here last year. So Lewis Hamilton's looking pretty good, considering he's not too far behind the drivers he needs to catch up to. Ocon starting in 12th place. Again, I was a little bit shocked that Alonso was so far quicker than Ocon. Ocon has looked pretty good, again, since the summer break, since that win in Hungary. And sort of Silverstone onwards, Ocon's looked pretty decent. He's had a few quiet races in recent memory, but hopefully Ocon can move forward. George Russell, again, putting himself in and amongst the sort of positions where you can start to gather up some points. Whether he'll pick up points this weekend, I'm not so sure. He obviously needs something to go wrong for the drivers in front of him. But again, you've got to put yourself in and amongst it. To try and get those points, and Russell is that guy who consistently puts himself in and amongst it. He tries to be near as many of those points finishers as he can be, and he qualifies exceptionally well as well. Talking about someone who qualifies exceptionally well, Schumacher, 14th place in a Haas, that is awful. Let's not beat around the bush. That Haas is probably one of the worst Formula One cars we've seen in this era. And, we've seen some Caterhams and some HRTs in recent memory. But Schumacher finally getting together a qualifying performance out of nowhere. Seemed really good. Again, in those mixed conditions, there was a little bit of wet, especially in the second sector. Schumacher just clicked, managed to get himself into Q2, starts in 14th place, and overall, if you're the Haas team, you've got to be looking at that Schumacher performance thinking, how on earth has he done that? How on earth has he done that? Daniel Ricciardo's qualified 15th yesterday, although I think somebody said in the chat that he's changing out his power unit, so we'll drop back some places. Bit disappointing for Daniel Ricciardo. Again, since the summer break, has been really good, and I think that's been the story for some of a lot of the drivers out there. They definitely used that summer break to rejuvenate their season, and none more so than Daniel Ricciardo, because he has been phenomenal since the summer break, picking up points consistently. Obviously got a win to his name as well in the McLaren. So Ricciardo, gutted that he was all the way down there yesterday. Obviously went out in Q1, clearly couldn't find the right balance for himself. Again, in the mixed conditions, in a McLaren that has been tricky for him this season. So, a little bit disappointed about Ricciardo, but, starting from the back there gives you an opportunity to go for those late break-in moves that Ricciardo's so well known for. And I'm sure we'll see some of those late break-in moves come out for Ricciardo too. Latifi starting in 16th place. He looked pretty good when qualifying first started, was sort of edging towards those top spots, and I thought possibly could get through into Q2, and then just sort of missed out with Russell, Schumacher, Ocon putting in some very good laps towards the end of Q1. So Latifi just starting there. Again, we'll be hoping to just keep the Alfa Romeos behind him, I think, if you're Latifi, because Giovinazzi and Kimi Räikkönen are starting just behind him. And Kimi Räikkönen is going to want to make up places. Giovinazzi pretty much always out-qualifies Kimi Räikkönen, but Kimi Räikkönen always manages to make up places and get ahead of his teammate. So those two will have a little bit of a battle going on between them over the first few races, with Latifi in the mix. Oh, I've just seen on here, actually, that it is confirmed Daniel Ricciardo is starting from 20th place. So he's dropped all the way back. So Latifi, Giovinazzi, Räikkönen, Mazepin, and Sainz all gain a position, because Ricciardo is going to drop back. Mazepin starting in 19th. Again, not too much to talk about, because Mazepin. Carlos Sainz starting in 19th place now. I think will be interesting. I know, obviously, if you're a Carlos Sainz fan, you don't want to see him anywhere near there, and he's been very good this season, just considering. And oh, I see. Yeah, yeah. Carlos Sainz obviously is getting in and amongst it, and has been really, really good this season. But I think 20th place offers a little bit of a change for him. You know, Carlos Sainz has been a defensive driver over the past few races, has qualified very well, or has managed to gain some positions quite early, and then has been quite defensive. Now we're going to see him really have to push forward. And Carlos Sainz obviously battling for points consistently. Whether or not he can get up into the points today, I don't think it will be big points for Carlos Sainz. I'd be very impressed if he can get into the top 10. There's a lot of very good drivers on the grid this season. There's a lot of drivers hitting a little bit of form as well this season. So I'd be very impressed if Carlos Sainz can get themselves up towards it. When does the race start? In about 10 minutes. Actually, I'm going to go grab some. I will be right back. I will be right back. And we're back. Predict Carlos Sainz P8. Oh, lovely. I'd love to see that. The broadcast hasn't started yet. No, 10 minutes. 10 minutes for me, anyway. Obviously, there's a little bit of delay on YouTube. So I'll be a little bit behind you guys. But obviously, we can chat about everything as and when it comes up. Predicted Carlos Sainz P8. I like that. Yeah, let's get some predictions in then. So I'll go for my predictions that I had for this weekend. The Lando Norris one, not looking great now, is it? Not looking amazing, but I went for Max Verstappen winning this race. I thought, you know, with Lewis Hamilton having that 10th place penalty, it's going to be fairly easy going for Max Verstappen to get himself a win. And I think, you know, it keeps that championship alive for him and gives him a massive opportunity to make up some points on Lewis Hamilton, who currently leads the championship by just 2 points. Lando Norris, 2nd place there. Yeah, not so sure about that 2nd place for Lando Norris now. I just thought, you know, he'll be biting at the bit to try and get back on track after last time out in Russia and missing out on that first win in Formula One. He'll be absolutely gutted. He'll have real fire in his belly. Didn't obviously qualify super well yesterday, Lando Norris, but 7th place could get a podium finish. I think it's going to be tricky for him though. But yeah, went a little bit balls to the wall with Lando Norris coming 2nd. Lewis Hamilton, I think, will get back up into 3rd. I sort of expected him to qualify 11th through to sort of 13th, effectively. He has qualified 11th, couldn't do any better than that. I think will side through 3 or 4 drivers over the first couple of laps. Then might hit a little bit of a roadblock, you know, talking Perez, Alonso, but I think still will have the overall pace and tenacity about him to get up into the podium positions. So I think Hamilton will be in and amongst it. I went for Sergio Perez as the best drive, or what's it called? Driver of the day, basically. Went for Sergio Perez as my driver of the day. I think he'll have a good race, and I think the Turkey track, the mixed weather conditions, sort of suits him a little bit. He can go really long on some tyres and do something a little bit, you know, unexpected with his strategy. And I think Checo will have a really good drive. Went for Ocon wildcard, and I really wish I'd have gone for Alonso wildcard. I was umming and erring. Basically, I thought that the Alpines would have a good weekend. I was umming and ahhing. And I went for Alonso as my wildcard a couple of races ago. So I was like, oh, I'll go for Ocon this time around. And now Ocon obviously is nowhere near it, and Alonso is starting up and amongst, possibly even heading towards a podium. So gutted that I decided to go for Ocon instead of Alonso. I'm sure you guys have got your Alonsos in the top 5 in terms of your predictions. And then I went for Yuki Tsunoda as the struggle of the weekend. And again, have been proven completely wrong. He's found some form yesterday, qualified in Q3 for the first time in a long time, and could end up having a pretty good race. Although he is up and amongst it in that sort of region with the Aston Martins, with Ocon, with Hamilton, and it could easily go quite wrong for Tsunoda in there as well. So it's 50-50 on Yuki Tsunoda, but I'd love to know your guys' opinions. I predict a Merc 1-2 and a red flag. Ooh. Okay. I think there's likely to be a safety car. Red flag. Yeah, I mean, pretty similar sort of chances of that. Predict a Merc 1-2 though. I'd love to know which way round you think that 1-2 will be. Verstappen, Gasly, Vettel podium from Cole. That would be something special. Bold prediction, Alonso P2. Ooh. I like that as well. Verstappen, Bottas, Checo, Leclerc, Gasly as a top 5. Hamilton not in there because you think he's going to spin out Manev. Going very bold with the Hamilton spin, especially, this track. He won the World Championship here last year. He likes this one. Have you seen Vettel's helmet? Yeah, I have seen Vettel's helmet. I love it. I do love, Vettel going all out this season to, what was it, in Hungary, he wore the LGBTQ plus t-shirt, and now obviously he's wearing the Sea Life one, isn't it? It's like, I can't remember the charity. What's the that's so bad of me. I can't remember what's on it now. It's the Sea Life helping Sea Life helmet, but I can't remember the actual name of the thing that is on the back. Would really like to see Leclerc win this race. Yeah, I could see Leclerc winning this race. I think it's just whether or not he gets the stint on the medium tyres right. Yesterday, the medium tyres really didn't look great for Leclerc. I think if he can get the medium tyres right and get into the pit stops there, and he's still in and amongst it, then maybe we'll see him manage to battle for it. Russell for world champion. Hello, mate. How we doing? Hamilton for the win, says Russell for world champion. What about Russell? Surely Russell. Russell next year. Russell next year. That makes sense. Make a Google form for predictions. Ooh. I hadn't had that idea before, actually, Doovie, but yeah, why not? I should do, actually. I could link it in with the community tab thing that I do. That is a good idea. That is a good idea. Leclerc win would be amazing. Lots of people hoping for a Leclerc win. Struggle could be Vettel too. Yeah, it's all those drivers in and amongst that sort of 8th to 13th, right? It could go either way for them. Either they have an incredible race and pick up some good points, or they just start to tumble down the order and fall out of it completely. How many safety cars? Probably 2. I reckon 1 on the first lap and then 1 sort of later on in the race at some point. Or in the first couple of laps, and then 1 later on. Alonso's second most number of overtakes this season at 91. Yeah, it's because off the start he always gets 3 or 4. Alonso, pretty much every race in the past few, he's just picked up 3 or 4 places on the starting line. So that's why he's got the most overtakes. He just always manages to jump people, and I'm hoping that today might be the same sort of thing, because he's got Gasly in front of him. He's got Leclerc in front of him. He could definitely jump those 2. And then we're up in towards the podium positions for Alonso, which would be very interesting to see whether he can hold on to a podium place. We've seen how good he can be defensively, but can he also get the tactics right? We're looking now. The guys are all on the grid for me. They're just running through the starting grid. I'll just pop that up there for you. Although Daniel Ricciardo has dropped down to 20th, has changed his power unit. So just be in mind that Latifi, Giovinazzi, Raikkonen, Mazepin, Sainz all actually grab a position, and Ricciardo drops down to 20th place. But I think all eyes are going to be on Hamilton at the start, right? Because Hamilton, starting in 11th, hasn't had the best couple of starts. Think back the past 2 or 3 races, he's lost positions off of the starting line, especially last week. Got really caught up in traffic and dropped like 3 or 4 places off of the first couple of corners. So Hamilton's got to have his eyes peeled on getting ahead of these drivers in front of him as quickly as possible. And if it is a poor start and, Hamilton ends up maybe, behind a Russell or an Ocon, just makes his afternoon a hell of a lot trickier. Biggest, boldest prediction, Mick in the points. My goodness me. Not sure about that one. Not sure about that one. Also, yeah, Manev, someone needs to tell Alonso that he can't go straight at turn 1. Alonso finds a way. I'd be surprised if I wouldn't be surprised if Alonso just darted across the grass or something. Just like randomly found like a route that is marginally quicker by darting across like some gravel and some grass. Wouldn't surprise me if Alonso went for that. We've got 17 likes on the stream right now. I'd love you guys if you could get that to 20. Let's get that to 20 before the race starts. We've got a couple of minutes, and the guys getting set out on their outlap, on their whatever it's called, grid lap, something lap. Mate, I've lost the absolute ability to remember things today. The words are just not coming. And you just got like that mental block. You're like, I know exactly the word I want from this, but it's gone. Everybody's starting on the intermediate tyres, although it looks like it's going to be drying up throughout the race. So it'd be interesting to see how quickly we go from inter tyres to mediums or softs. Do you show live footage here or only commentary? I'm afraid the live footage is illegal to show if you're not a broadcasting agency. So we do not do that. Here we go then. We are at formation lap. Oh my god. Formation lap. We are up underway for a formation lap. I'll pop the Drivers' Championship up there just quickly for you so we can have a look at that over the formation lap. I'm not going to go into too much detail on it, though. I think the main thing you need to know, Hamilton 2 points ahead of Verstappen. Ooh. Gasly on the radio being told that this is likely to stay the same conditions. The same conditions throughout the whole race. So I thought it would be like an intermediate start and then go on to slicks, but maybe we'll see inters throughout the whole race. It'll be interesting. It adds another layer of madness, basically. We saw last time out in Russia what rain can do to strategies and to people's races. You're thinking about Max Verstappen jumping all the way from 7th, 8th, all the way up into 2nd place last time out because of strategy and just getting the change of tyres right at the right time. So we're getting there. Yeah, thank you, Richard. Formation lap. It completely disappeared out of my head. And Richard was the man. He knows. How much should we wait to sync with you? I think it's probably a couple of minutes. The problem is YouTube doesn't give like a definitive amount of time that there is a delay. I think it's 2 minutes, or about it's about a lap or so. But I'll let you know where I'm at. Hello, everybody. Is it raining? Not really. Like, when it's like not really raining, but like a tiny, tiny little bit. Like, there's not really rain, but there is water coming from the sky. But it's one of those one of those like 50-50s. So for me, Bottas has literally just taken his place on the grid. And now Charles Leclerc is slotting in behind him. We've got Pierre Gasly as well. If we look at the qualification grid in front of us, apologies, yeah, Ricciardo has dropped down to the back and didn't have quite enough time to shuffle him into place. Will we hear Bono, my tyres are gone? It will be interesting to see if Hamilton does a similar sort of thing he did last year, where he just wears the intermediate tyres into slick tyres. We're now looking at Lewis Hamilton on the grid. Here we go then. We've just got the couple of drivers. Carlos Sainz is just about taking his position. Carlos Sainz is in place. So is Daniel Ricciardo. And there is the safety car just coming in behind them. We've got a green flag is being waved. And 2, 3, 4, 5. It's lights out. Here we go then. This is going to be good. Bottas gives a really good start, actually, and looks fairly comfortably down into turn 1. Lewis Hamilton has not been able to make up too many plays. Oh, and there's Alonso. I'm afraid the Alonso fans, they're not going to be happy with this one. He has spun out into turn 1. It's gone all wrong for Alonso. He's going to join the back of the pack. That is not good if you were hoping for an Alonso victory, but it does mean everybody has picked up a place, basically. That's a real shame. I was just talking up Alonso's starting ability and how good he was off the start line, as Hamilton is now having a little bit of a battle with Ocon. Charles Leclerc has managed to maintain 3rd place. Sergio Perez has jumped up into 4th place, just behind the Ferrari. Daniel Ricciardo and Carlos Sainz having a little bit of a battle with Latifi as well in there. And Daniel Ricciardo is trying to go around the outside of Carlos Sainz. So we've got Hamilton, Verstappen, and Leclerc, our top 3. Perez, Gasly's managed to keep himself in 5th place. Lando Norris up into 6th. Stroll, Tsunoda, Vettel still stay together on track. Hamilton hasn't been able to make up any places, though. Apart from the Alonso place, obviously. Hamilton's still in 10th. Was battling well with Ocon. Giovinazzi and Raikkonen have made a great start. Up into 12th and 13th. Mick Schumacher has managed to hold on to 14th place as well, while there's been a bit of chaos around him. Russell's dropped down to 15th. Alonso's been able to rejoin the track in 16th place. Ricciardo, though, has just got past Alonso as I say that, up into 16th. Alonso down into 17th. Carlos Sainz 18th. Mazepin and Latifi are at the back. But Bottas looks fairly comfortably in the lead here, and looks to come home in this first lap fairly safely as we go back into turn 1 again. Lewis Hamilton now has been able to get past Sebastian Vettel. Obviously, the rivalry between them, the Sebastian Vettel at Ferrari years, doesn't manage to hold him up for too long, and Hamilton jumps up into 9th place. Yuki Tsunoda next in line for Hamilton, and as I say that, Lewis Hamilton goes side by side with Yuki Tsunoda and doesn't quite make it stick. That's unfortunate for Lewis Hamilton there. He really went for that move on Yuki Tsunoda, but he's going to have to wait that tiny little bit longer. Yeah, it's Russell and Alonso that have been the real losers over this first lap or two. Carlos Sainz has managed to just jump back in front of Daniel Ricciardo. Those two really battling one another, and obviously costing them the ability to get up further and further. You should stream on Twitch, less delay. I thought about it. I'll be fair. It's like definitely there's going to be a lot of changes moving into next season. I'll tell you that much. I'll tell you that much. But this season, sort of where we are. Here we go then. Bottas still leads this race and now gets a comfortable little 1.6 second lead. Lewis Hamilton now looking at Yuki Tsunoda. Doesn't quite get it done, although we're going through that final sector. And Bottas has just set the fastest lap of the race. Goes across the line and down into turn 1. Charles Leclerc still just behind him. Pierre Gasly holding on to 5th place. Lando Norris 6th. Stroll in 7th. Is Hamilton close enough to Tsunoda through turn 1? Nowhere near Yuki Tsunoda down into turn 1, unfortunately. Oh, Schumacher drops down. What's happened to Schumacher there? He's dropped down a lot of places. I think he might have spun off or lost control of the car somewhere. Let's have a little look. Oh no, they're going back to the race start. Of course they are. Who on earth directs these things? So what happens here with Alonso, actually? Let's look. Down into turn 1. Seems fairly comfortable. Ooh, I don't know whether there's a little bit of contact between him and Gasly there. I don't think... no, it doesn't look like it. I think Alonso does just, unfortunately, he tries to go around the outside, tries to take the opportunity. Here's the onboard then. We'll know here whether or not there's a little bit of contact with Gasly. They do get close to one another. Oh, maybe. I think so. Yeah, Gasly does touch Alonso there. So Gasly's just nicked the rear left tyre of Alonso there. And that's caused Alonso to spin out. So yeah, Who's actually? Yeah, so it's a bit, I don't know whether it's a bit of a racing incident or whether Gasly will pick up a penalty for that. Alonso was sort of in front of Gasly, but at the same time, there's not too much that Gasly could have probably done. And also, Perez is on the left-hand side of Gasly too. So, yeah, it's going to be a close one. It'll be interesting to see how the FIA interpret that one. Valtteri Bottas gets a great start, though. Much better than Max Verstappen. Is clean into turn one. Can take it fairly wide and fairly slow as well because he's just got such a good drive off the line. Does Valtteri Bottas. But yeah, there's a little bit of a touch between Alonso and Gasly. Be interesting to know what you guys think. Oh, and then Alonso bumps into Mick Schumacher. It's actually Alonso. Alonso in 2 incidents already this race. I was wondering what happened to Mick Schumacher. Nicholas Latifi also spun out, I think, in 20th place. Yeah, Nicholas. There's probably going to be an incident at some point, and probably a safety car. There's a few drivers in and amongst it with one another, bumping tyres, bumping into one another, and spinning around on track. So, Mick Schumacher, that's unfortunate that Alonso came into contact with him. But again, I'm not sure what's going to happen here. So Alonso's been in a couple of incidents. One of them may be his fault. One of them maybe not his fault. So Verstappen, some sort of issue with his gear shifting system. And under investigation, Fernando Alonso and Pierre Gasly. So we're moving on to lap 5 of the race then. Bottas, Verstappen, Leclerc, still our top 3. You Leclerc fans will be very, very happy with that. Perez, Gasly, Norris, Stroll, Tsunoda, Hamilton and Vettel make up our top 10 and points scorers at this moment in time. Ocon is currently 11th, Giovinazzi 12th, Raikkonen, Russell and Sainz down to 15th, Ricciardo 16th, Alonso has joined the track after his couple of incidents in 17th place, Mazepin just ahead of his teammate Mick Schumacher in 18th and 19th respectively, and Latifi rounds out the top 20, or the 20, the top 20? I suppose they are the top 20, but the 20 drivers that are there. Here we go. Alonso race might be over. I think he had a bit of damage for Alpine. There hasn't been... maybe. I haven't really seen an onboard with him since those 2 incidents. So I'm not so sure if there is any damage to his car. But Alonso's race is definitely not what he'd have wanted it to be, considering how well he qualified yesterday. Not a safety car, red flag. Whereabouts? What's happening? What's going on? Oh, my goodness me. I mean, this means nothing now. I'll pop the Drivers' Championship up. Boop. Oh, Carlos Sainz and George Russell going wheel to wheel, and Carlos Sainz does manage to get it in front. Is he going to keep it there? Yes, he does indeed. Lewis Hamilton still really struggling behind Yuki Tsunoda. Lewis Hamilton really, really struggling behind Yuki Tsunoda. And, Yuki Tsunoda, I said he was going to have a poor race, and I said that Hamilton might be able to get through him very, very quickly. That has not been the case at all. Yuki Tsunoda doing a really good job of keeping Hamilton behind. And Hamilton currently just, again, not really able to have a look at Yuki Tsunoda. Goes for a different kind of tactic as we get confirmation that the FIA are also looking at that Fernando Alonso Mick Schumacher incident. Oh, I see. Yeah. I'm not hoping there'll be a safety car, but I think there definitely will be one just because of these mixed conditions, and because there's been a few incidents already between drivers, and lots of drivers getting very close to one another, getting very close to catching out one another as well. So it's not that I'm hoping for a safety car, I just think there will be one. In your opinion, races in the wet are really beautiful. Yeah, the sprays are exquisite, aren't they? I think it was Aldous the other day on Twitter said, like, when we were looking at, was it free practice where it was a little bit wet, and the spray and the swirls that you get, and just the aerodynamicist's work shown in its full potential, right? Because Yuki Tsunoda down into turn 1. Lewis Hamilton again can't quite get there as we move into lap 7 of the race now, and Hamilton is going to get more and more frustrated looking at the back of that AlphaTauri. Although there's not a lot going on in the top 10, to be honest with you. Bottas looks fairly comfortable in the lead now. Verstappen, obviously on the radio earlier, having a little bit of an issue with his gears. So Verstappen just sitting pretty in second place. Charles Leclerc not really troubling either of the top 2 in third. Neither Sergio Perez. Sergio Perez a fairly comfortable 4th place. Has a little bit of a gap to Gasly behind and quite a nice gap in front of him with some open air before you get to Leclerc. So there's not too much going on in this top 10. Lando Norris actually quite a considerable margin behind Pierre Gasly already. Lance Stroll in 7th place has managed to keep himself nice and comfortably positioned and is taking advantage of the fact that Yuki Tsunoda has to be quite defensive over these first few laps and is eking out a little bit of a lead over Yuki Tsunoda and, of course, Lewis Hamilton down in 9th place. Lewis Hamilton, again, not close enough to Yuki Tsunoda. I think every single lap he's getting closer and closer, and it might just be that final sector where Yuki Tsunoda has just got the traction or maybe got the temperature in his tyres, because Lewis Hamilton's getting closer and closer and closer, but then by the time they get into turn 1, as I say that, I've jinxed it. I haven't. No, Lewis Hamilton's nowhere near. From the camera angle, I thought Lewis Hamilton had gained and got him, but now we're looking through this first sector again, the 2 of them. And Lewis Hamilton going around the outside, and now he's finally managed to get that groove going. It was a much better final sector from Lewis Hamilton. Gets a lot closer down into turn 1 to Yuki Tsunoda and carries that speed through. Manages to get around the outside just as we come towards the second sector. Wonderful move from Lewis Hamilton. Now he's got his eyes on Lance Stroll. Let's have a look at this again. Yuki Tsunoda can't really do much. Gets a nice slipstream, does Lewis Hamilton. And just goes around the outside. Really aggressive driving from Lewis Hamilton. But then obviously has the inside line going into the next corner. So some very nice moves from Lewis Hamilton as we're looking at Carlos Sainz has managed to make himself all the way up and siving through the field. Gets past the Alfa Romeos easily. And Carlos Sainz now up into 12th place. Time penalty for Pierre Gasly for that incident with Alonso. He's got a 5-second penalty. He is currently 6 seconds in front of Norris, so not too much of a penalty for Pierre Gasly, but obviously later on in the race, if it starts to close up a little bit, if there's maybe a little safety car, we could be a little bit concerned for Gasly with that 5-second penalty. Here we go, coming around still. Hamilton having a look at Stroll, not quite close enough on lap 9 of this race. The gap between Verstappen and Hamilton, they're just showing, is about 17 seconds. And as I say that, Lewis Hamilton does a lovely little dive up the inside of Lance Stroll. Wow, the Aston Martin's really not putting up a fight for Lewis Hamilton whatsoever. And now Lewis Hamilton has a little bit of a gap to Lando Norris. Maybe just a bit of track where he can flex his muscles a little bit here, Hamilton, and we can see his real pace. Meanwhile, Carlos Sainz. Let's go again for Carlos Sainz. What's happening here? He's coming up to the Alpine of Ocon and makes it look easy. Now up into 11th place. Carlos Sainz, take a bow, my friend. Nearly up into the points already and has left the likes of Daniel Ricciardo and Alonso for dead in 16th and 17th. 5-second penalty for car 14, causing a collision. So a 5-second penalty as well for Alonso for that contact with Mick Schumacher. So Gasly and Alonso both picking up 5-second penalties. And if you're Fernando Alonso, you're in 17th anyway and miles off the pace. So not too much going on for Fernando Alonso all the way at the back there, unfortunately. Team radio for Bottas. No patches of dry and no dry lines yet. So Bottas just pointing out that the intermediate tyres are still the correct choice. As I said, I think we're going to go from intermediates all the way up to soft compound tyres later on in the race, because these cars are shifting the water a little bit. By what I can see, it's not raining at all now, so it is going to start to dry up. And 20 Formula One cars acting as giant hairdryers going around the track does help when you're pushing that water off of the track. Oh, sorry, what's going on? Bro, I have a delay. Yeah, it's YouTube that has a delay, unfortunately, not me. So YouTube puts in an automatic delay. Oh, and here we go. Lewis Hamilton, as I said, Lewis Hamilton had a lap there also where he could really start to stretch his legs, and we saw some great pace from Lewis because he's already on the back of Lando. Now, Lando Norris is going to want to get revenge for Russia, surely, and keep Hamilton behind for as long as he possibly can. Saying that, Lewis Hamilton is gaining and gaining and gaining and gets past Lando Norris, and with ease. Hamilton is making this look exceptionally easy. Hello, Mallory. How you doing? You all right? Alonso might retire from the race if he stays at the back. Nah, he'll continue on. Like, he's a good competitor, and you never know what's going to happen. Like, there might be a big collision later on in the race that takes out 4 or 5 cars, and then suddenly you're like, oh, Alonso's in the points. Now, you never know, one of those things could happen. So he won't retire from the race. But my goodness me, Hamilton absolutely flying out there. And now Gasly next up on the road. Now, again, in Russia, Gasly was a bit of a roadblock for Lewis Hamilton, caused him a little bit of a headache, and ended up obviously making Lewis Hamilton pit to try and get out there. Verstappen wants a conditions. Tiny bit dry, but still quite greasy, says Verstappen. So I think most people are going to stay out on these intermediate tyres for a considerable amount of time. I think, again, this is where, the likes of Leclerc or Perez, if they're... Can you tell how much to sink? Probably about a minute and a half, I'd guess. Bottas, though, looking comfortable in first place. Now 2.5 seconds ahead of Verstappen. We haven't heard anything about Verstappen's gear troubles that he was having at the beginning, so I'm sure that they've managed to fix that between the team. Leclerc then coming home in third place as we enter lap 12. Carlos Sainz now looking at the back of Sebastian Vettel. What a drive we've seen from this Ferrari man today. Whether or if he can get up into the points and, start to catch on to the likes of Norris, my goodness me, Carlos Sainz is absolutely flying out there. Can we have a quick rundown of the drivers' positions? Of course you can. Bottas is in the lead. Verstappen currently second. Leclerc in third, rounding out our podium positions. Perez and Gasly, the two Honda men, in fourth and fifth. Hamilton all the way up into sixth already now. Since getting past Tsunoda, it's just made it look easy getting past Stroll and Norris. Norris in 7th place, Stroll in 8th. Tsunoda still in the points, in 9th place, doing very, very well indeed. Vettel in 10th, our last point scorer. But Carlos Sainz is flying out there today, already up into 11th place and staring at the rear wing of the Aston Martin. Ocon is in 12th, Giovinazzi 13th, Raikkonen 14th, Russell down in 15th. Ricciardo, a real poor start from Ricciardo, was ahead of Sainz for maybe 3 or 4 corners at one point, and then Ricciardo and Sainz have just had two very different races. Ricciardo all the way down in 16th. Alonso gutted down in 17th after his spin with Gasly. Latifi 18th, Mazepin 19th, and Mick Schumacher down in 20th. As we watch on board with Carlos Sainz again, eking ever closer to that Aston Martin of Sebastian Vettel and a points finish. Goodness me. There's an ad break for me. Oh. What, on the stream? Shouldn't be. Not for me, anyway. Uh, here we go, then. Hamilton has got past Norris fairly easily, but there was quite a considerable gap between Norris and Gasly. Hamilton saying his tyres are starting to wear down, starting to maybe struggle for grip a little bit. Still very greasy out there. Can Hamilton get up to Gasly? Remember, Gasly managed to hold back Hamilton for quite a nice amount of time. Hamilton has set the fastest lap of the race as well. That's what I mean. When Hamilton's got the clear air, he's just showing that he's got that extra bit of pace compared to everybody else out there. And when it does come to the pit stops, I think we're going to see an undercut of dreams from Lewis Hamilton. You know, he's probably going to make up a place or so on Gasly, maybe even Perez, if he can properly get it going, or gets past Gasly already. Oh, Bottas. Light drizzle in turn 8, 9, 10. Apparently, Carlos Sainz goes up the inside of Vettel. Obviously, Vettel, the old Ferrari man himself, and Carlos Sainz manages to make it stick up into the points from 20th up into 10th already. And Sainz breaks late. Oh, and there's a little bit of a touch there with Vettel. Carlos Sainz, I'm not sure. It's going to be close. I'm not sure if Carlos Sainz will pick up a penalty for that. Not sure. Obviously, he's struggling under braking, but at the same time, it didn't look tidy from Carlos Sainz. Did manage to make up the place, though, and is now flying up the street towards Yuki Tsunoda, who's in 9th place and next up on Carlos Sainz's hit list. Talking about hit lists, we're now on board with Lewis Hamilton, and next on his is Gasly, who's just in front of him now. And Hamilton edging closer towards the AlphaTauri man. Now, it took Hamilton a good few laps to get past Yuki Tsunoda. Will it take a considerable amount of time to get past Pierre Gasly? No, it doesn't look like it. Hamilton's got a wonderful slipstream there and just absolutely dominates Pierre Gasly. Easily gets past him, and now up into the top 5 for Lewis Hamilton already, just 15 laps into this race. If anyone said that Lewis Hamilton couldn't win this race, I think you might want to change your bets, because my goodness me, Hamilton looks quick out there in these conditions. He's just got so much pace to burn, it seems. Gets the undercut, gets the slipstream from Pierre Gasly down the back straight and just makes it look really, really easy. Wow. So sort of just into that back straight, as you sort of see the track where it turns from Sector 2 to Sector 3, that yellow line there. Hamilton just seems to have so much more pace than everybody else at this point, as he's going down that back straight, seemingly finding the slipstream of everybody, and then down into that final couple of corners, just manages to make it stick every single time as Lewis Hamilton. And by the time we get to turn 1, which is sort of the general, sort of normal overtaking opportunity down into turn 1 for a lot of these drivers, Hamilton's just already got it done, and sign seal delivered. Hamilton up into 5th place, and next up on the grid is Sergio Perez in 4th for Hamilton. Again, quite a chunk of time. Hamilton needs to make up 6 seconds if he wants to catch up to Perez, but he is setting fastest lap after fastest lap. Yeah, you're right, mate. You said Merc 1-2, and I didn't believe you. I thought Hamilton might struggle to get past some of these cars in the midfield, but since he's got past Yuki Tsunoda, he's just made it look easy. Made it look simple. And as I say, Yuki Tsunoda is now defending from Carlos Sainz. Yuki Tsunoda's been the only driver that's given Hamilton any sort of headache so far this race. Can he give Carlos Sainz a headache as well? Because Carlos Sainz has been shuffling up towards the top of this pack as well. Oh, Indian broadcasters, I see. Yeah, chuck in a little ad break, why not? Oh, Lewis Hamilton. Right side getting a little bit bald on the inside, so his intermediate tyres, he is pushing them really, really hard at this moment in time, because he's already just made up a second on Sergio Perez as we move into lap 16, headed towards lap 17 of this race. Lewis Hamilton, 15 laps, 16 laps on these intermediate tyres, starting to get those bald patches that you get on them, starting to turn them into slick tyres effectively. And whether or not they'll decide to change the tyres around. Obviously, Bottas came on the radio and said possibly that there's a little bit of rain through turns 8, 9, and 10. So Gasly on the radio has been told that there is front right damage for Hamilton and Norris. There is some considerable bald spots on those tyres for Lewis Hamilton as we watch the slow-mo replay, but I'm not sure it's going to hold back Lewis Hamilton that much because he's still gaining and gaining on Sergio Perez. Can Sergio Perez do his teammate a favour and hold Lewis Hamilton behind for enough time for Verstappen to find at least a little bit of pace going forward? Bottas still looks very, very comfortable in the lead of this race. Verstappen hasn't really been able to trouble him, and Charles Leclerc has just been following behind as we watch Carlos Sainz again hunting Yuki Tsunoda just a little bit too far back that time down into turn 1, but let's see if Carlos Sainz can close the gap over the course of this lap. Ocon is catching Vettel, you say? Let's have a little look. Yeah, he is. Ocon is slowly catching Vettel. It's not been great for Vettel this race so far, has it? Lewis Hamilton asking about others' tyres. And they're going to have a little look. As we heard earlier on Gasly's radio, Norris is having a little bit of struggle on these intermediate tyres. The McLarens don't look great here today at all. Lewis Hamilton made getting past Norris look very, very easy. Norris, a fairly nonplussed 7th place at this point in time. Ricciardo can't seem to get past George Russell all the way down in 16th. It's not really been the day for McLaren, unfortunately. Let's see then. Carlos Sainz gaining and gaining on Yuki Tsunoda. As Max Verstappen sets the fastest lap of the race. He's now 3 seconds behind Bottas as Carlos Sainz goes up the inside of Yuki Tsunoda down into the final couple of corners, manages to get in front of him and will have the lead over Yuki Tsunoda moving into lap 18 of the race for him. Carlos Sainz now up. Next on his list is Lance Stroll. Carlos Sainz looking incredibly quick out there. How many cars can he get past in these changeable conditions? And also, will there be any sort of investigation about him having that little connection with Sebastian Vettel? Max needs to win this race if he wants any hope of this championship. Mallory with a big, big statement there. But I kind of agree with you. I think if Hamilton goes on to win this race, it's going to be very tricky for Verstappen going forwards because Hamilton, this time out and last time out in Russia, just looks so quick at this point in the season. Incredibly, incredibly quick. I say that Verstappen's just set another fastest sector in Sector 2. So let's see what we can do. Bottas, though, sets the fastest lap of the race. So Bottas has been told to give a little bit of a hurry up because Verstappen was finding some pace. So Bottas sets a 1:33.1. Leclerc still fairly comfortable in 3rd place, not really having to worry about Sergio Perez, who is 8 seconds behind Charles Leclerc right now. But Lewis Hamilton is the next man on track and is the man that we are worried about catching Perez and how far he can get up this order because he just looks so quick. And I think if he gets anywhere near the front 3, he's going to turn it on even more so, and we could see some real wheel-to-wheel racing between Hamilton and Verstappen later on in this race, is what I'm predicting. Will there be another little collision between the two as well? Verstappen looks like he's going to have to be the defensive driver if Hamilton does manage to catch up to him. Valtteri Bottas, not looking great through turn 1. A little bit of a slide. Possibly those tyres starting to come towards the end of their life there. The track is drying up a little bit, but still very greasy, still very sticky in places and very slippery. So Hamilton 5 seconds behind Perez as we come on to lap 19 of the race. My goodness me, and just catching by tenths and tenths every single sector as well. Although Max Verstappen now has seemingly stepped on the pedal a little bit, saw Valtteri Bottas in front of him do a little wiggle through turn one, and has used that opportunity to gather just a few tenths or so. If my predictions come true, I'll change my username to Valtteri. So when you say something to me, it'll be Valtteri, it's James. Nice. Yeah, I like it. My goodness me. We need to remember the fact that Hamilton hasn't changed other parts, PU and MGUH. That is very true. He did only change the engine, so we'll probably have to change those parts later on. But if you listen to Toto Wolff's interview, he sort of talked about that and said, you know, the reason is because we can't afford to drop all the way down to 20th if we're not going to be able to make up those places easily and consistently. So dropping down to 11th and dropping down to 20th is such a different kettle of fish, especially at this point in the season where Hamilton and Verstappen are so close in that Drivers' Championship. So for me, it makes sense that they decided to only change that one piece and obviously go for some different pieces in the next few weeks or so. Lando Norris on the radio. Lando Norris saying that his intermediate tyres are effectively slick tyres at this point. None of the grooves left in there. None of the water displacement left in there either. So now we're just looking at Lando Norris on soft compound tyres, effectively, or harder compound tyres, because they are just turning into slicks. Very bald, actually, as we're on board with Ocon now. And yeah, those tyres, even Ocon's intermediates, starting to look very bald indeed as Hamilton sets a fastest lap of the race. The gap between him and Perez down to 3 seconds now. Wow. Just in like 3 or 4 laps, Hamilton has gained 3 or 4 seconds on Sergio Perez already. The battle for P19 between Mazepin and Mick Schumacher. They don't really ever show that on the live stream, unfortunately. But maybe we'll see a little bit of Mick Schumacher versus Mazepin action. Seems like the kind of race that those two would have a little collision together. Maybe that'll be our safety car. Mick Schumacher and Mazepin having a bit of a coming together as we see a slow-mo of Lewis Hamilton's right rear tyre. And that is very bald indeed. Reminds us of the Turkish Grand Prix last year where Hamilton took those intermediate tyres, did 40-odd laps on them and basically turned them into slick compound tyres. And Hamilton should be within striking distance of Sergio Perez within the next 4 laps. So we're looking at lap 25 or so before Hamilton is within striking distance of Perez. And then starting to look at the podium positions, the next man in front will be Leclerc. Ricciardo on the radio saying that he would be much, much faster on a new set of intermediate tyres. So are McLaren going to take a little bit of a gamble with Daniel Ricciardo? To be honest with you, they've got absolutely nothing to lose. I think Ricciardo all the way in 16th place, they may as well go for it. They might as well just go for it, right? Ricciardo in 16th, put him on some intermediate tyres. If it rains, then congratulations. If it dries up completely, it didn't go your way, but maybe you've been able to make up enough time on the intermediate tyres, and they are going for it. They are going for it. I think this is a good move, a clever move from McLaren, because it's looking pretty awful for Daniel Ricciardo down in 16th, and he really hasn't been able to get anything going his way. So, new intermediate tyres for Daniel Ricciardo. Let's see what he can do on those new inters, actually. And this might start to give us some information about who's going to pit when. Because those intermediate tyres coming on for Daniel Ricciardo means that everybody else now gets to see, is it time to just go for intermediates, or shall we wait for slicks? Because 23 laps in now, Carlos Sainz now looking at the back of Lance Stroll. Carlos Sainz, by the way, is flying out there. Got to remember, Carlos Sainz, I'll pop up the qualification because Carlos Sainz started right at the back of the grid. Carlos Sainz has been all the way from 19th place. Is that Yuki Tsunoda? It is. He spun out, and now Yuki Tsunoda is down in 12th, 13th place. 13th place, yeah. Oh, Yuki. Let's have a little look at this. Does he just get onto the white line or anything? What's gone wrong for you, Yuki? Just completely loses the rear end of the car. Not really too much he could have done. Yuki drops out of the points and down into 13th place. That's very unfortunate for Yuki Tsunoda. He'd had a fairly decent race up to there. He'd caused Carlos Sainz a little bit of a headache, caused Lewis Hamilton a bit of a headache, and defended quite well from both of them. But yeah, Yuki Tsunoda now drops down the order into 13th place. We have got, on lap 23, Bottas still leading, Verstappen second, Leclerc in third, Perez in fourth, Hamilton in fifth place. Gasly, Norris and Stroll, those guys that are just in front of Carlos Sainz in ninth place already from starting right at the back. Wonderful from Carlos Sainz. It's going to really help him in the Constructors and Drivers' Championship, especially with Daniel Ricciardo losing out on a lot of points today that could have been his had he turned up yesterday. But Carlos Sainz in ninth place, and the final points finisher is Sebastian Vettel now. Sebastian Vettel in 10th place and will pick up a point for Aston Martin if the race finishes like this. Ocon, though, will be the man that wants to get up into that top 10, currently running in 11th. Giovinazzi in 12th, Tsunoda 13th, Raikkonen 14th, 15th, George Russell. A little bit of a poor performance from him. Not really the track that he wanted this weekend after a good qualifying performance again from George Russell. Alonso 16th, Latifi 17th, Ricciardo 18th, Mazepin and Mick Schumacher rounding out our grid. Remembering, though, that Gasly has a 5-second penalty and Alonso has a 5-second penalty as well because of the incidents that they were involved in the first couple of laps. Obviously, Gasly actually spinning out Fernando Alonso and then Alonso doing the same to Mick Schumacher. Lap 24 of this race then, and edging towards half distance here. Obviously, 29 laps will be 50% of the race distance, and everybody apart from Daniel Ricciardo still on the intermediate tyres they started with. We haven't actually seen Daniel Ricciardo's lap times as the blue flags start to be waved to Mick Schumacher and Mazepin for Valtteri Bottas. I'd love an onboard of Daniel Ricciardo right about now. You know, has changing onto those intermediate tyres given him a real push forwards is what I'd like to know. But whether we will see that or not is left to be desired. 32 likes on the stream. I've just wandered across to the stream and had a little look. 32 likes. Thank you all so much. I appreciate that massively. If you haven't left a like, why not? If you haven't left a like, why not? Leave a like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Thank you all so much for watching. Here we go then. Verstappen and Leclerc, second and third. And Leclerc currently actually making up a little bit of time on Verstappen. 3/10 last lap, 3/10 the lap before. Is Leclerc now finding a little bit of pace on these intermediate tyres? Maybe he was, just holding back a little bit. Or possibly the fact that they are now getting into the traffic of the Hasses. And the blue flags are starting to be waved. Here we go. Bottas and Verstappen then. 2 seconds the Bottas has a lead over Verstappen. And then Verstappen 2 seconds again to Charles Leclerc. We've then got quite a bit of time before we get to Perez and Hamilton. Although Hamilton has sort of stuck to this 3 seconds. You should check for a broadcasting license. I mean, yeah. Anyone got a few million sort of dotting about? I think Sky pay like 100 million or something ridiculous for the rights in the UK. But, you know, it's a good idea. I love your optimism. I love your optimism. Possibly in the future. It's something we can build up to. Here we go then. Ooh, and Ocon and Vettel now having a little bit of a fight with one another coming through this final sector and onto the pit straight. Can Ocon get close enough down into turn one? Doesn't look like it. Gets a bit of a poor lean off into that final corner. Maybe next lap Ocon can have a little look. Yeah, Hamilton, as I was saying, seems to have dropped off a little bit. Hamilton just sticking 3 seconds behind Perez now. Maybe those tyres, you know, he did use up every single thing he could. Ricciardo is disappointing this weekend. We never know. We never know. Ricciardo is now on a fresh set of intermediate tyres, although it doesn't look like he's catching Latifi at any kind of pace. So we'll have to wait and see. ESPN got for free. Oh, okay. For the USA. I mean, maybe. Try a one-stop, says Carlos Sainz. Trying a one-stop strategy for the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz. I think that makes sense. Here we go. Let's have a look at the radar then. Doesn't look like there's like little spitters and spatters of rain, but doesn't look like there's going to be anything massively torrential that will change the dynamic of this race too much. Possibly it just looks like it's going to be inters for the foreseeable, and if it does go to dry tyres, it's going to be very, very late on. When's the first pit? So Ricciardo has already pitted and got on some fresh intermediate tyres. But unfortunately, doesn't look like he's gaining any sort of time on Latifi in 17th place anyway. So I think they'll probably leave it a little bit longer. If Ricciardo was suddenly making up, you know, like 2 seconds a lap on everyone in front of him, then like you sort of consider that and be like, yeah, maybe we should find a little gap where we can get ourselves onto some new intermediate tyres. But it doesn't look like they're going to be changing any time soon. And Carlos Sainz literally just came onto the radio and said, why not? Let's go for a one-stop strategy. I think the person who's on a little bit of pressure and the person who will be wanting the tyres sooner rather than later is Lewis Hamilton. He's just a couple of seconds behind Perez now, but hasn't had anywhere near the pace that he had sort of 3 or 4 laps ago. And just literally comes on the radio and says, having a little bit of a struggle with these tyres. And obviously the rain is starting to come down a little bit, according to Hamilton as well. But over the last couple of laps, he has been slower than the likes of Bottas and Verstappen. Leclerc setting the fastest lap of the race. So Hamilton is going to want some tyres fairly quickish. Because he'd done so well to make up so much time on these leading guys when he was getting through the likes of Stroll and Norris and Gasly. But now Lewis Hamilton is struggling. A 14-second gap between Hamilton and Verstappen with 30 laps left to go. So if Hamilton's going to get anywhere near Verstappen by the end of this race, and in terms of the Drivers' Championship, that's the guy he's got his eye on. Vettel on the radio. Ooh. Vettel. Nikita Mazepin is not letting Lewis Hamilton through. Oh, my goodness me. Ugh. Do we have to talk about Mazepin and blue flags again? do we have to talk about Mazepin and blue flags again? So it's every race. Every race. Danny Ricciardo 2-stop. Yeah. Danny Ricciardo's gone very early on this stop for intermediate tyres. Although it hasn't seemed to help him in any way whatsoever. But Sebastian Vettel on the radio there saying that he might see the track drying up, and he can envisage the track drying up before the end of the race. So we could see slick tyres at the end of the race. Bit of a flip on what we had in Russia, basically, where we obviously had the last few laps of the race on inters. We could end up with the last few laps of the race here in Turkey on slick tyres, and that would put a massive spanner in the works for a lot of the guys out there. Can we pay Haas to leave him? I mean, yeah, we'd have to pay whatever the Mazepin family have paid. And I feel like between us, we probably haven't got that much. I certainly have not. If you do want to support the stream, if you want to, maybe we could start saving up now. Although I did spend all of the money I got from YouTube on a stream deck last month. So I haven't started saving up yet, but I'll start the saving up very soon. If you did want to support the stream, there's obviously Super Chat. There's also a link to Patreon in the description down below for just £4 a month. So the price of a coffee or like a pint. You can support me, support the stream, and get some bonus content, some live streams, some live chats with me, so on and so forth. Also, a podcast episode about my sort of journey on YouTube so far. Believe it or not, I started on YouTube 10 years ago, and I talk through all 10 of those years. So if you would like to support the stream, there is a link to the Patreon down there. There's also a link to Freetrade. If you're into your stocks and shares, get involved in Freetrade. If you sign up with the link in the description, you get yourself a free share up to £200. And you also support me. I get a little bit of a kickback on whatever share you get, I get as well. So we both get a share worth £200. So why not sign up for some free cash, basically, on Freetrade? As we're seeing Ocon again. SG with the Squid Game suspicions. Oh, Ocon, here we go. Involved, not looking great between Ocon and Vettel, and they get very close to one another. Goodness gracious me. James's stream isn't delayed, it's his broadcast. No, I'm watching live. Watching live. Oh, as in like, yeah, my stream isn't delayed. The YouTube delays my stream. We'll get there. Is it going to be a pit stop? No one beside Ricciardo's pitting. To be honest, everyone seems to be just going very, very long. Everyone's going very, very long. I think it's a bit of a mix with those guys. Ocon and Vettel are just getting so close to each other. Every time I see it, I'm just like, oh, they're going to crash. Very close indeed. Yeah, all the tyres seem shot to pieces, but I don't think anybody wants to be the guy that goes in for intermediates again, just in case the slicks become good. It's one of those, it's right on the edge. Like, the rain isn't really coming down. There's been spitters and spatters of rain here, there, and everywhere. But Sergio Perez and Lewis Hamilton starting to fight with one another. Hamilton gaining on Perez. But yeah, everyone's tyres are shot to pieces. Like, if you see the onboards, especially the front right and rear right tyres on Lewis Hamilton, Lando Norris as well, we saw an onboard, absolutely awful. Like, they're basically slick tyres at this point in the race, but nobody wants to blink first. Nobody wants to be that guy that goes too early onto intermediate tyres, because I'll be honest, Daniel Ricciardo is pitted and doesn't... Oh, it's a 5-second penalty. I was like, oh no, something's gone wrong for Alonso, but he's just... stopping for his 5-second penalty. Of course he is. And Alonso has come in for intermediate tyres again? I think so. Again, though, Alonso and Ricciardo literally have nothing to lose right now. So, yeah, they might as well go for it. Will the rain stop and when? The rain has pretty much stopped. It's only like a few corners here or there. And the track is like in that really odd intermediate, like slick but not quite slick in some areas section. Like there's a bit of grease here and there, but on like the main racing line, like you can see the main racing line is pretty clear. Bottas now complaining about temperature in his tyres as well. Trying to get a little bit more temperature into those tyres to maybe get himself going a little bit more. Although he has managed to eke out a bit more of a lead on Verstappen. It was down to 2 seconds earlier on. Now back up to 4 seconds and a half. What happened to Danny Rick? He came in early, went for those new tyres. He's been a little bit quicker. He's now catching up to Latifi. He's catching up to Latifi, but not, massively. Hamilton, though, is raking real gains on Sergio Perez. I'm just sort of having a look down, and Hamilton now starting to look at the back of that beautiful white Red Bull for this weekend. Little rundown of our grid so far. Bottas is in first, Verstappen second, Leclerc in third. Perez is in fourth, but is being hunted by Lewis Hamilton in fifth, who's just half a second behind. Gasly still remains in sixth place. Has a 5-second penalty, though, does Gasly. Norris is in 7th, Stroll is in 8th, Carlos Sainz in 9th place, and Vettel down in 10th. Perez better run, says Mallory. Yeah, he's going to have Hamilton on him very, very soon. Although Carlos Sainz has just said it's raining even more now. Wow, it's so flip-floppy, isn't it? Some drivers saying that it's going to be dry by the end of the race. Some drivers saying that it's still too wet. Is very, very flip-floppy between those drivers now. They really are just, not happy with the track. And some drivers have absolutely no idea what they want to do. They're just like, can we try this strategy, and this strategy, please? But supposedly raining more now. So that's really good for Daniel Ricciardo and Alonso, who have already come in for some fresh intermediate tyres. They will be very happy indeed that it started to rain a little bit more now. Let's have a look. Can I get this up? But yeah, they'll be very happy indeed. Could I show the track of the map track? Of course, good. There he is. Alonso got lapped. Yeah, well, he is, he has made a pit stop. He's one of those only ones. Ricciardo is now making a little bit of headway. Swinging Popsicle. Hello, mate. How we doing? Yeah, I think Ricciardo made the right choice too. Now that it's starting to rain a little bit more, Ricciardo definitely on... Oh, yeah, sure. Did I put the track up? Yeah, I put the track up. It should come up soon. Ricciardo... Yeah, is now starting to look good on those intermediate tyres. And obviously, if everybody else is going to start to pit fairly soon for intermediates, those guys have already got their pit stop out of the way. And Daniel Ricciardo is starting to make ground on the guys in front of him. Nothing good for Alonso because he got lapped. Yeah, but he is on the intermediate tyres on a fresh set. And he's got a little bit of open air. He's got, 15-second gap between him and Latifi. So he can also start to push towards possibly, saving this race in some way. Hopefully he can start to save this race. Oops, what have I done? Oh, Sergio Perez and Lewis Hamilton going wheel to wheel. Down into turn 2. Oh. Sergio Perez is not giving in whatsoever. And they're going down. They go across the start-finish line together. Lewis Hamilton, is he going to get ahead down into turn 1? No, Sergio Perez comes back and pushes back in front. Sergio Perez manages to hold on to the position. Wow. That is amazing stuff from Sergio Perez and Lewis Hamilton there. They go wheel to wheel. Oh. I feel like the stream's having a little bit of a moment. But yeah, Lewis Hamilton and Sergio Perez going wheel to wheel there for 4 or 5 corners and down into turn 1. Really lovely stuff from those two. Wow. Wow. That is some really nice racing between Sergio Perez and Lewis Hamilton. Sorry, I'm just watching the replay. Although we've still got Hamilton on the back of Sergio Perez. We're on lap 35 now. But Perez holding on to that position, doing his teammate a massive favour. As Sergio Perez, though, is miles behind the likes of Leclerc and Verstappen. So Hamilton, even if he does get past Perez, has still got a massive, massive task on his hand to get anywhere close to the guys leading this race. Bottas from Verstappen, from Leclerc. Perez then in fourth, and Hamilton just in fifth place behind Perez, although he's going to have another look at Sergio Perez again down into turn one, I would imagine. Get some good traction off of the final corner. Sergio Perez moves himself so that Hamilton can't get the slipstream straight away. Doesn't get the slipstream straight away, and Lewis Hamilton cannot really get anywhere close. For this lap, let's have a look again. Lewis Hamilton, lap 35 of the race. It looks like Lewis Hamilton's got past him, and then Sergio Perez breaks so late down into that final couple of corners. Lewis Hamilton nearly pushes him into the pit entry. Has to go round the bollard, actually. And Perez actually complaining that Hamilton did indeed push him off of the track. So, wow. Did he push Perez just a little bit too wide? Will he pick up a penalty for that? I'm not so sure. Not so sure myself, but we will have to wait and see. Yeah, there's a few people coming into the pits now. So Yuki Tsunoda's decided to come in and pit. Lando Norris decided to come in and pit. George Russell as well coming into the pits. I think people are deciding that the intermediate tyre is going to be the one for the rest of this race. So Max Verstappen as well comes into the pits, and it's a smooth pit stop from Red Bull. They are indeed the smoothest of operators, as Verstappen is going to rejoin the track, hopefully just in front of Perez and Hamilton. Yeah, it looks like Verstappen is indeed going to be just ahead of his teammate Sergio Perez, and is going to have a good chunk of track in front of him is Verstappen, and some lovely clean air. Here we go then. Ferrari also bringing Carlos Sainz into the pits for intermediates as well. So people are sort of edging their bets and thinking, you know what, it's probably not going to dry up enough for slick tyres. We're going to go intermediates. We're going to try and go to the end of the race on these intermediates too. And Carlos Sainz with a really slow stop. Did he have a 5-second penalty? No. But bad stop for for Carlos Sainz there. That's really going to cost him. That's really unfortunate for Carlos Sainz. I don't think he had a 5-second penalty. I know Alonso had one. No, Gasly had one. But strange. Just a bad stop all around for Ferrari, unfortunately, as Sebastian Vettel comes out of the pits. And he's on slick tyres. Hello, Sebastian Vettel has gone onto medium compound tyres. Okay. Okay. Everyone else has gone on to onto the intermediates from what I can see. But Vettel has gone for the slicks. Wow. As Perez comes into the pits and releases Hamilton for a lap or two. So Perez now coming in, intermediate tyres going on to the Red Bull this weekend. And hopefully we can get an onboard for Hamilton, whether or not he can get the undercut going for Sergio Perez or not. Needs to try and get in front of Sergio Perez through this. I'd also love to see an onboard with Sebastian Vettel, who is just dropping down the order. Okay, Sebastian Vettel really not happy. Yeah, not dry enough, I'm afraid, for Sebastian Vettel. Is dropping down the order like a sitting duck. Vettel all the way down into 17th place now, unfortunately. Probably can't get any temperature in those tyres. I'd be surprised if there's any kind of temperature in those medium compound tyres at all with the mixed... wow. With the mixed sort of look at this. Goodness me. Sebastian Vettel on board again and just slips off of the track onto the asphalt and all the way out there. Goodness me. Ooh, very wiggly for Sebastian Vettel indeed. Goes off again and round. Yeah, that is a poor choice as we go on board with Leclerc, who locks up and goes off as well. So Charles Leclerc not having a great... He is in the lead as Charles Leclerc, but not having a great time of it as Sebastian Vettel comes into the pits again. So the medium compound tyre was not a good idea. And does go on to the intermediates now. Sebastian Vettel tried to go for something different. You know what? They had really nothing to lose, to be honest. So why not? Why not go for it, Sebastian? And it really did not go for him. Leclerc's pitted. No, I don't think Leclerc's pitted yet. Leclerc's not pitted. Hamilton, though, is the man we need to have our eyes on. How long is Hamilton going to stay out there for? And what we didn't see was that Sebastian Vettel coming into the pit lane almost does a pirouette into the wall. Sliding and sloshing about is Sebastian Vettel, and that is very close to touching the wall on the entrance to the pit lane there. Charles Leclerc, though, with the fastest lap of the race. Now that he's in some free air, Charles Leclerc is really finding some pace. Unfortunately, he had that issue. What's going on? Everyone pitted already. No. Charles Leclerc hasn't pitted. Stroll hasn't pitted. Gasly is just coming in, from what I can see. Yeah, Gasly's just coming into the pit lane. Giovinazzi hasn't pitted yet either. Mick Schumacher's not pitted yet. There's a few. But Gasly obviously has to do that 5-second time. And now they can change his tyres. So Pierre Gasly, with that 5-second additional time added to his stop, a 9.2 second stop for Gasly. So not super quick for the AlphaTauri team, even with the 5 seconds added on. Let's have a look then. And showing a replay of the start with Pierre Gasly bumping into Fernando Alonso. What I'd like to see, guys, is Lewis Hamilton's times. Can I ask that of them? Maybe. Sergio Perez. I'm not sure about this Gasly 5-second penalty, you know. I am massively biased, but I'm not sure about it. Oh, Bottas is about half a second faster every single lap at this point on Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc on the radio. Charles Leclerc asking on the radio if he can stay on that set of tyres until the end of the race. He has done 40 laps on those intermediate tyres. He's got to do another 18 laps on those intermediate tyres. And Leclerc wants to possibly go until the end of the race on them. Wow, that is a very, very out there strategy from Ferrari. I'm liking it. I'm liking the balls to the wall attitude that Ferrari have got going into this Grand Prix. Although Bottas is making up tenths over tenths over tenths every single sector. So I'm not sure about that. Leclerc trying to go to the end of the race on these tyres? I'm not so sure about that. Bottas in second place. Verstappen in third. Hamilton currently in fourth place, though Hamilton yet to have stopped. So Hamilton needs to have a little bit of a stop. Oh, as we see The Mercedes guys coming out of the garage. Is this going to be the time for Lewis Hamilton? Obviously, he wants to try and jump ahead of Sergio Perez if he can. I don't think that that's going to happen, though. And he will have to get in front of Sergio Perez on track rather than in the pit stop. Still not going in, though. Lewis Hamilton decides to stay out for one more lap, maybe. Oh. Hamilton on the radio. Being told to box. And Hamilton saying that the new intermediate tyre is not the way he wants to go. Decides not to go into the pit. So Mercedes were out and ready. And Lewis Hamilton just drives on by. So Lewis Hamilton staying out on those intermediate tyres. And is about 4 seconds behind Verstappen at this point in the race. Leclerc has not pitted yet. No, Nathaniel. Leclerc has not pitted yet. Carlos Sainz, though, is an interesting one. Where's he now? He's in 9th place after quite a slow stop behind the likes of Ocon. Ocon has yet to have stopped, though. And then the next man up in front of that is Lando Norris, not Ricciardo. Ricciardo, though, is up into 11th place, by the way. So Ricciardo did get that completely right. So Ricciardo went for a stop, obviously fairly early onto the new intermediate tyres, and Ricciardo looks quick now. Could possibly even see Ricciardo up into the points. Hamilton on the radio again, asks to stay out, so he's going to stay out for at least one more lap still. Woo! Hamilton and his team, again, butting heads on what is the best strategy, where should they go, and what should they do. Hamilton and his team, they never seem to agree, do they? They never seem to be on the same page. Let's have a little look at the Drivers' Championship, because obviously the most interesting thing at this moment in time is if the race stopped now, Verstappen would be in 3rd place and Hamilton would be in 4th. That would put Verstappen in the lead of the championship by 1 point. So Verstappen would gain 3 points on Hamilton today and would put himself 1 point ahead of the Mercedes driver. So maybe that's coming into the thinking of Hamilton at this point. You know, maybe Hamilton's thinking, because I'm not going to be able to pick up a huge amount of points, and possibly even if I pit now, will drop behind Sergio Perez and lose out on a couple more points. Maybe that's in Hamilton's mind. Maybe Hamilton's, not thinking this entirely through, because personally, I think, the new intermediate tyre is the one, because Sergio Perez is gaining on Lewis Hamilton every single lap, but there is only 15 laps left to go. So it could be that Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton just decide to go super long. Hamilton saying it's not far off dry. So Hamilton clearly in his mind is thinking, if I can do 5 or 6 more laps on these tyres, maybe, just maybe, I can get myself on some slicks for the final 5 or 6 laps of this race. It's a big gamble from Lewis Hamilton, but it's the kind of thing that does win you championships if it pays off. So let's see what happens with Lewis Hamilton. Charles Leclerc doing a similar sort of thing, currently leading the race, although only by 2.5 seconds from Valtteri Bottas in 2nd. So we currently have Leclerc, Bottas, Verstappen, Hamilton, Perez as our top 5. Gasly, Norris, Ocon, Sainz and Stroll, our next 5 down into 10th and our current points finishers. Although Daniel Ricciardo is suddenly, out of nowhere, the man who is going quickest. Like, he's put in some really good times compared to the other guys in the midfield and is gaining on Lance Stroll. And Ricciardo will be the one that wants to get into the points and cost Aston Martin their points from today's race. Giovinazzi in 12th place, Raikkonen 13th, Yuki Tsunoda really disappointing from him down in 14th place. As we go on board with Charles Leclerc, what's happening here in 1st place? And again, it's Charles Leclerc locking up and going wide into those final couple of corners. So it is just after the final back straight with DRS. It's the second time we've seen Charles Leclerc lock up in that Sector 3, the first couple of corners of Sector 3. It's the second time we've seen him do that in the past couple of laps. Possibly those tyres really starting to struggle now because it is not looking good for the Ferrari as Bottas is edging ever closer still. Okay, Charles Leclerc. Not really too much from Ferrari there. Charles Leclerc asks, where is he going to be if he stays at this pace? And Ferrari say behind P1. Obviously, Bottas is already staring at the rear wing of the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc, is just over a second behind the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc. And Bottas still has 13 laps to gain on him on some fresh intermediate tyres. Charles Leclerc's intermediate tyres now 44 laps old. So, my goodness, I don't know what Ferrari are aiming for here. Their pace is not good. At least Lewis Hamilton's still putting in some decent lap times on his intermediates. Charles Leclerc's completely seemed to have dropped off a cliff. Charles Leclerc's struggling to get around the final couple of corners with these intermediate tyres. And Bottas is going to be the man who wants to take advantage of that as soon as he possibly can. Not quite this lap. Has to wait a little bit longer for his possible win in a Mercedes car. Would be Bottas's first win of the year. Would pretty much guarantee him, I think anyway, a third place in the Drivers' Championship for this season. And also might be his last ever win in Formula 1 as he's moving on to Alfa Romeo next year. We move into lap 46 of this race though. Bottas again 0.6 of a second faster than Charles Leclerc last lap. So Bottas gaining and gaining and gaining. Will it be this lap that he gets in front of Charles Leclerc? He's right on the rear wing of him. And again, it's how good you are through Sector 2, really. Sector 2 is the real margin gainer because it gives you a massive push down into that first corner of Sector 3. So Bottas is pushing a lot. Ocon's still staying out. Yes, indeed. Ocon's going for a similar tactic to Leclerc and Hamilton by the looks of things, hoping and praying that it gets a little bit drier and that they can maybe push onto slick tyres. Carlos Sainz, though, having a look at Ocon down into turn 1. Is Carlos Sainz going to be able to make it stick? He does, indeed. Carlos Sainz gets up into 8th place. Sainz P8, as you predicted. Very well done, mate. You're spot on. And there's still a little bit of time for him to maybe catch up to Norris. Charles Leclerc again on the radio to his team, asking again and again, give me some more information. Can I have some information about what's happening? Because Bottas is going to make it happen down into turn 1. Charles Leclerc squeezing Bottas up towards the wall, but it doesn't do anything. Valtteri Bottas takes the lead of this race and gets going ahead then. So Valtteri Bottas is looking very good for the win this time around in Turkey. I'd quite like Bottas to win as well, actually, Dane. I think he deserves it. And as I said, this might be his last win in Formula 1 because he is moving to Alfa Romeo next year and I can't see him getting too many wins in an Alfa Romeo. But we'll have to wait and see. Possibly, you never know. But Bottas looks really good at this moment in time. Gets the move done on Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc does try and inch Bottas towards the pit wall. And then obviously goes back onto the racing line. But Bottas' fresh intermediate tyres just doing all the work for him. So pushing well ahead of Charles Leclerc and has disappeared off into the distance now. More than 2 seconds ahead of Charles Leclerc. In the lead is Bottas. Now, Verstappen is 3.5 seconds behind Charles Leclerc with 11 laps left to go. So it's whether or not the Red Bull man can get close enough to Charles Leclerc to also cause him some issues. We'll see in the next couple of laps or so. Let's see what we can do then. Charles Leclerc looks like he's going to come in. He does indeed come in, yeah. Charles Leclerc has come into the pits now. And into the pits. Let's see where he comes out. I think he's going to possibly be behind Lewis Hamilton here. Hamilton yet to have stopped, though. Will he be behind Sergio Perez is another interesting thing to look at. Where is Sergio Perez on track? Just coming down the pit straight. So it's going to be close between Leclerc and Perez, actually. And Charles Leclerc is going to come out just in front of Sergio Perez. So just in front of Sergio Perez. And Perez now 1.2 seconds behind Leclerc. So that's going to be an interesting little battle as well. Charles Leclerc on fresher tyres from the two. But Sergio Perez has looked pretty quick here today. And has caused a lot of headaches for those guys in the mix. We also know Sergio Perez is pretty good at holding on to tyres moving towards the end of a race. As Carlos Sainz sets the fastest lap of the race now that he's in a little bit of free air. Has Lewis pitted? No, Dane. He has not pitted yet. Not at all. Not pitted yet. Bottas, Verstappen, Hamilton are current top three. As I said, though, Hamilton yet to have pitted. Leclerc in fourth. Perez in fifth place. And Hamilton just 5 seconds behind Verstappen now. If it ends like this, Verstappen will pick up 18 points. Hamilton will pick up 15 points. So we might not get the James Valtteri moment. I don't think so. Mainly because Bottas has just driven up the road and disappeared into the distance. He's now 6, nearly 7 seconds ahead of Verstappen is Bottas. So looking like Bottas is just going to drive off into the ether. And Verstappen, Hamilton, and Leclerc are going to be left in his dust. Norris catching Gasly a bit right now. Still 4 seconds behind though. And only 9 laps left. So it's going to be very tricky for Norris to make up that kind of time. Similar sort of thing. Carlos Sainz setting fastest laps right now. But Norris is 14 seconds ahead of Carlos Sainz. So doesn't look like they're going to be catching one another anytime soon. As Carlos Sainz sets another fastest lap of the race. Maybe Carlos Sainz is just going for that extra point. He knows how much those individual points will cost this season, and therefore he wants to get that extra point on the board. Wow. Carlos Sainz absolutely flying out there. My goodness me. Bottas spin. I don't think so, unless you're a little bit ahead of my live feed. But I don't think so. Hopefully not. I'd like to see Bottas win one race this season, and, getting out of the way in Turkey is probably good, because it means for the last 6 races of the year, we'll have a little bit more of a battle at the front. Hamilton P3, Max P2, Bottas P1 is currently how it stands. Leclerc is in P4. Lewis Hamilton sliding around, but it's okay. Hamilton does not want to pit. Just does not want to pit. To be fair, he's got a 10-second gap on Charles Leclerc. 8 laps left to go. So Charles Leclerc is going to have to catch up at over a second per lap if he's going to catch Lewis Hamilton, which I just can't see happening, Lewis Hamilton is not going to pit in this race, guys. Hamilton is not going to pit in this race. He's just going to go all the way. Oh, and the commentary now talking about a big cloud. That is the only thing that could really ruin Hamilton's race if there was an extra bit of rain coming down. Ooh. And a Ricciardo now saying that he's hanging on by a thread. So, Ricciardo, again, not a great finish from him in 11th. Not bad considering he started in 20th, I guess. But, oh, hello. Mercedes in the... Oh, Hamilton is coming in. Hamilton is coming in. Here we go. Hamilton doing what he's told for once. I thought Hamilton wasn't going to pit. I thought they'd just go all the way. But Hamilton is pitting. Where's he going to come out then? Just behind Sergio Perez, probably? Behind Leclerc, behind Perez. Gasly's coming down the pit straight as well. I think he's going to be quite a chunk of lap time behind, behind Perez and Leclerc. I'm not so sure about this one from Mercedes, unless it starts to rain. I'm not so sure. Not so sure about this Hamilton pit, but we'll see how it goes over this next couple of laps. So Hamilton 6 or 7 seconds behind Perez, so needs to put in some flying laps very, very soon, or needs to hope that this rain does come. Obviously, Mercedes are thinking that the rain is going to come because they've put Hamilton out there behind Perez now. He had a 10-second gap to Leclerc. I'm confused by this. We'll have to wait and see. I don't think I'd have done it. I think if you're going to pit, you're going to pit, right? Oh, as Perez and Leclerc are coming wheel to wheel, Perez goes around the outside, and now I say that Lewis Hamilton's got to catch Sergio Perez. He's actually going to have to catch Leclerc unless Leclerc can get back on the inside. No, Sergio Perez manages to hold on to it. So Perez puts himself into the podium positions. The Mexican is there. I hope Alpha signs Zhao, because he means more money to develop that car. Yeah. I think Alfa Romeo are one of the teams that I just don't... Ooh. Hamilton on the radio, really not very happy. Really not very happy, because Sergio Perez obviously has just taken over Charles Leclerc. And it looks like Hamilton is probably not going to be able to catch up to those two. I'm going to be honest. Hamilton seemed very, very nonplussed on the radio when he came into the pits, and now seems very angry indeed. But Leclerc losing out to Sergio Perez. Sergio Perez, driver of the day? Possibly, He's been very, very good. It's either Sergio Perez or Carlos Sainz, isn't it? Those two have just been sensational. Sergio Perez's first stint on those tyres kept him in really good condition. Yeah, did really well. And now is pushing towards those top spots. Sergio Perez, I'm sure, won't knock on the door of Verstappen in these last 6 laps, but a podium position finish for Perez is really good indeed. We are now looking at Lewis Hamilton on the back of Charles Leclerc, though. And Leclerc, complaining on the radio, has no rear grip at all. So I think Leclerc's probably going to lose out to Hamilton here. Hamilton's 3.2 seconds faster than Charles Leclerc last lap. Wow. Okay, maybe Mercedes did make the right call putting him on intermediate tyres, because that is one hell of a lap time from Lewis Hamilton compared to the rest of the field, apart from Carlos Sainz, who is also absolutely flying. Wow. And now Hamilton, I love that he went for the Mercedes, then had an argument with Mercedes, and now is looking like he's actually going to benefit from this pit stop. Just flip-flops. Lewis Hamilton on the radio is just a sight to behold. Like, just changes every 5 seconds with Lewis, doesn't it? It's either absolute disaster or complete elation, and nowhere in between. Here we go then. Alfa Romeo is irrelevant. I wouldn't say irrelevant, but they're just the team I never really think to worry about. like, you know what I mean? Oh, Lewis Hamilton. Ask him what position he is in. And Lewis Hamilton again on the radio, really complaining. Massive graining on these tyres, saying that he shouldn't have come in. Saying that he told the team. And again, Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes butt heads when it comes to pit stop and strategy this season. I agree with Lewis Hamilton on this one, I'm afraid. I agree with Lewis Hamilton on this one. Although his lap times have been really good. Oh, as Esteban Ocon and Lance Stroll manages to get past Esteban Ocon up into ninth place. I think that puts the Aston Martin and drops Ocon down into 10th. They'll both still pick up points, but Stroll will be happy with that, being the only Aston Martin in the points this time out. But here we go. Bottas looking comfortably in the lead here. An 8-second gap to Verstappen, who has a 10-second gap to Perez. Oh, no, it's an 18-second gap. Sorry, not 10. 18-second gap to Perez. So the top two look fairly comfortably set in stone. And I'd say Perez also fairly comfortable. Third place finish. Charles Leclerc in fourth. Currently, Hamilton really struggling behind Leclerc. 2.5 seconds behind now after he was catching and catching and catching. Has now dropped considerably backwards. And actually, Pierre Gasly is just 0.8 of a second behind Hamilton. Could have a little look at him towards the end of this race. We've got 3 laps left to go. And Gasly now looking the better of the two. Oh my goodness me. Is Gasly gonna get ahead of Lewis Hamilton? Not this lap. Oh my god. Lewis Hamilton is having a nightmare out there now. It was looking so good for Lewis Hamilton. Then he pitted and it's just fallen apart, hasn't it? Really, really poor strategy decision from Mercedes. Lewis Hamilton should have stuck with his gut because he is now just dropping. Leclerc now more than 3 seconds ahead of Lewis Hamilton and Gasly just a second behind him. Wow. Very good weekend for Red Bull. Yeah, you're right, LT. Very, very good weekend for Red Bull. Both of them on the podium. Some good chunk of points for them as well in the constructors. Hamilton now looking like he could lose a place to Gasly. All going really well for Red Bull all of a sudden. Wow. It's all gone wrong for Hamilton. It really has. Norris is behind Gasly as well. Yeah, I know this could get from bad to worse. I mean, Norris had a bit of a nothing race, right? It's not really been too much to talk about in terms of Norris this afternoon. It's a shame considering he's been in such good form in the last few races or so. But Lando Norris now obviously in and amongst the battle with Lewis Hamilton as well. We've got a little bit of a chain of cars with Hamilton, Gasly and Norris. Obviously, you've got to remember, Gasly had a 5-second penalty as well. Imagine if Gasly wouldn't have had that 5-second penalty, he'd now be ahead of Lewis Hamilton on the track. My goodness me. Hamilton is going to absolutely lose it if he also loses this place to Gasly, as well as losing out to Leclerc and Perez after that pit stop. It's not done yet. Checker flag not waved. That is very true, but I don't know. I don't think Lewis Hamilton's going to be a very happy bunny at all in the press conferences after this race. It's going to be it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good for the Mercedes garage. I'm sure they're going to have a stern talking to. As Carlos Sainz actually goes up into 3rd place in the overtake leaderboard. Sebastian Vettel with 96 overtakes this season. Alonso with 95 and Carlos Sainz with 90. Just shows you how good Carlos Sainz has been today. Lots of overtakes from him. Lots of really good, tidy racing from the Ferrari man. And he's going to pick up some points. You know, it's not the points that he's been used to over the past few races. But, yeah, Carlos Sainz in an 8th place position. Ocon P10 and not pitting. Yeah, I know. Ocon is gone for a complete out there strategy. 0 pits for, I think Charles Leclerc and Hamilton may have gone for the 0 pit stop strategy, but their teams just sort of forced their hand, didn't they? They just kept poking and poking and poking. So what's going to happen? Verstappen is going to pick up 8 more points than Lewis Hamilton today. So he's going to go into the lead of the Drivers' Championship by 6 points after the race. If it stays how it is. Bottas also going to pick up 25 points and give himself a nice margin to Lando Norris. I think that basically confirms Bottas for third place in the Drivers' Championship this year for me. Sergio Perez is going to catch up to Norris a little bit in the Drivers' Championship, but not too much. Carlos Sainz and Leclerc, is that going to switch over? No. Charles Leclerc is going to pick up a good amount of points, but not enough to overtake Carlos Sainz. Daniel Ricciardo is going to stay where he is, not going to pick up any points today, as he actually loses a place to Giovinazzi and to Raikkonen as well. Ricciardo really struggling on this final stint. Gasly's going to pick up a good chunk of points and put himself a little bit further ahead of Alonso. He's going to be very happy indeed that he's not going to lose out on points to Alonso and Ocon, because Gasly's going to keep that 9th place in the championship. I think that's about it in terms of what the changes are going to be. Who else is picking up points? Stroll's picking up points. Not enough to get anywhere near Vettel. Yeah, I think that's basically how it's going to stay. There's just going to be a little changeover. Verstappen and Hamilton going to switch places. Bottas going to extend his lead, and Gasly also extending his lead as well for that 9th place finish. And that sort of best of the rest title for the midfieldy teams is Pierre Gasly is fighting for. But Valtteri Bottas is going to pick up another win for Mercedes. Here we go then, coming down into the final couple of corners is Valtteri Bottas, comes around the final 2, goes past the pit lane entry, around the final left-hander, and it's going to be Valtteri Bottas. It's going to be Mercedes. They're going to take 25 points in the Constructors' Championship, and he wins the Turkish Grand Prix. Wonderful stuff. And Bottas wins this race. It's going to be Verstappen comes home in 2nd. Perez comes home in 3rd place as well. Leclerc 4th. Hamilton in 5th place. Gasly in 6th. Lando Norris in 7th. Carlos Sainz in 8th place. 9th place for Lance Stroll. And the final points finisher is going to be Ocon. Giovinazzi is in 11th place. Raikkonen 12th. Ricciardo 13th. Yuki Tsunoda 14th, George Russell 15th place, and Alonso Latifi behind him. Oh, are we though? Gasly not yet hurt. Oh no, it does come across the line. Lando Norris as well. Bottas on the radio. Wonderful stuff from Bottas. A great win for him in Turkey, to be fair, and it's lovely to see him on the top step of the podium. You know, I am critical of Valtteri Bottas. But he has done exceptionally well to win this race today. Mixed conditions, drove very well from the front, never looked in doubt, and a very professional performance from Valtteri Bottas. And as I said, possibly his last win in a Mercedes. It's going to be tricky for him to pick up wins later on in the season when it gets down to some proper crunch time. Max Verstappen's going to look quicker, I'd imagine, than he did this weekend. Max Verstappen, a bit of a non-race for him. Started 2nd, finished 2nd. Also a bit of a sort of professional drive from Max Verstappen, but nothing too scary happened along the way. And Verstappen says that they think they maximised what they could get out of today. So they'll be happy with a 2nd place finish. And Sergio Perez will be very happy indeed with a 3rd place as well. Sergio Perez getting his podium positions and just chalking up another one for Red Bull. Lewis Hamilton's going to be very, very sick though indeed. He is not going to be happy with the Mercedes team basically forcing his hand and pushing him to pit towards the end of the race. And he is not going to be happy with that pit stop because he did not want to come in. Lewis Hamilton was very adamant that he wanted to stay out on the track. But Lewis Hamilton was pushed to come in and dropped down to 5th place. Managed to lose out to Perez and Leclerc because of that pit stop. And he is not going to be happy at all. Charles Leclerc's probably also going to be a little bit gutted. Had the opportunity to come in for tyres early, decided to stay really long on that first stint on the intermediate tyres and didn't quite come to fruition for him, did it? And Charles Leclerc Probably would have wanted to get a podium position today, but Sergio Perez was very, very good today. So you can't really blame him in the Ferrari. And the Ferrari looks quick, at least under Carlos Sainz. So Charles Leclerc and then Hamilton rounding out our top 5 as well, but will not be happy with 5th place. Gasly, a good chunk of points for Gasly in 6th, and Lando Norris as well. Again, picking up a good chunk of points. I said it was going to be nigh on impossible for Lando Norris to hold on to 3rd place in the Drivers' Championship after the summer break. He would have had to do something absolutely phenomenal. And unfortunately, it's not looking like he is going to be able to do the undoable, is Lando Norris. And he's going to drop down a little bit towards Sergio Perez and miles away from Valtteri Bottas as well, with Valtteri Bottas getting that win. Yeah, very, very close indeed. Ocon getting some points, Stroll getting some points, but not enough to make a massive difference in the Drivers' Championship. Constructors' Championship as well. Red Bull are going to be very happy with that. Although they didn't pick up the win, 2 drivers in the points with the podium positions. 18 points for Verstappen, 15 points for Perez is a good chunk considering, Hamilton is going to pick up, 10 points, and they're going to pick up 35. And yeah, so Red Bull are going to be fairly happy with a good chunk of points considering they haven't won this race. Who else picked up points? That's about it, right? Not too much else going on down the grid. Alonso is going to be very, very disappointed with himself. Poor Seb. Yeah, Seb tried to go for something different, didn't they? Went onto the medium compound tyre at one point. Did one lap with those. Realised that Sebastian Vettel was effectively ice skating and came back in for some intermediates. Bit of a poor choice from Aston Martin there. I kind of understand what they were trying to do, going for something different, go the complete opposite to everybody else and hope that it comes to you rather than them, and not sure. Yeah, Alonso is going to be really disappointed. He did pick up that 5-second penalty for himself, though. I know that he spun off with that hit with Gasly, and then, yeah, Alonso, a race to forget. If you're an Alonso fan, a race to definitely forget for him. He'll not be happy at all. But that is it for the Turkish Grand Prix. Valtteri Bottas, our winner today in Turkey. A very, very good race from him. Schedule for next week. Obviously, there is no Grand Prix until the USA Grand Prix in 2 weeks' time. So some videos coming up on the channel. A couple of little special videos coming out soon as well once they get edited up. And possibly also a video containing lots and lots of your favorite YouTubers. I'd love to know, actually, your favorite Formula One YouTubers. Who are they? Why them? Because I'm doing a video with lots of collaborations as well. So hopefully that is coming out before the US Grand Prix as well. Mallory, biggest losers today was Ricciardo. Yeah, you're probably... well, I mean, he did start 20th. But it really didn't go well for him, especially that first stint. And then came in early for tyres, and then again, the tyres just completely dropped off. So Ricciardo ended up just nowhere. But he has been the form driver, It's okay to have one off race here and there, especially if you're in a car that he doesn't really get on with, especially in these mixed conditions by the looks of things, because we've seen the pace that is there for him. He did really well in Spa, actually, in the rain, now I think about it. So, yeah, just one of those ones for Danny Ricciardo. Hopefully it's not a pattern that will start from here. Instead, it's just a one-off race that he had a poor race in. And Danny Ricciardo will be back to his best next time out. Alonso, Vettel, Ricciardo, yeah, they all had pretty poor races. You're spot on, to be honest. Fastest lap went to Bottas. So Bottas picks up 26 points, yeah. Bottas got the fastest lap. Tomo, John Warren, and Aldous for me. I mean, I wish I could collaborate with them. They're a little bit out of my reach. Chazza, Tomo, WTF1, John Warren, others. we'll have to wait and see. I've got a few collaborations coming up very soon. Chain Bear. Actually, I haven't messaged Chain Bear. I might message Chain Bear. But yeah, little collaboration video coming up on the channel very, very soon. So keep your eyes peeled. Obviously, we have started the Patreon as well. There is a link to that in the description down below. The first ever Patreon podcast is live. If you want to hear about my journey so far on YouTube, believe it or not, I've been doing YouTube and making YouTube videos for 10 years. So if you want to hear the insight, everything I've learned and everything that I seem to understand about YouTube so far over those 10 years, make sure you click that link in the description down below. And for the price of a coffee, you've got access to lots of bonus content for an entire month over there on Patreon. And then also down in the description is a link to Freetrade. If you're into your stocks and shares and you like a little bit of trading, if you want to give a little bit back, me and you could both get a share for up to £200 worth of shares, basically, for free if you use the link in the description down below. Obviously, do be careful. It is your capital at risk, but you get a free share and support the stream if you sign up with the link in the description down below for Freetrade. So have a little look, see if that's for you. But I'm going to leave it there. What a Grand Prix we've had. Sergio Perez picking up third place. Max Verstappen again on the podium. And Bottas with his win. Probably his final win in Formula 1. But my goodness me. Just found your channel tonight, by the way. I'm glad. I hope you enjoyed it. Obviously, we do these streams for every single Grand Prix weekend. Leave a like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. And then there will be videos here, there, and everywhere throughout the next couple of weeks until we are back for the United States Grand Prix. And it's hotting up. 6 races left to go. 6 points between Hamilton and Verstappen. And it's going to be very close indeed. Let me know who your driver of the day was as well in the comments below. I'll leave it there. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.